What's the point of movies? Really? Are they a masterful art form designed to evoke each and every emotion, a gateway to breathtaking worlds through visuals, music, and sound, a stage for actors to pour their souls into characters that stay with us forever?
Wrong, sir. Wrong!
Movies are money-making machines of enterprise, crafted only for the benefit of the executives' pockets. That's exactly why sequels and remakes dominate the highest-grossing movies list year after year. But sometimes the financial success is justified, experiences are had, records are broken. So today, we're looking at 7 upcoming films that have the potential to be 2025's biggest hit. And at the end, I'll put them in the order of how much money I think they'll end up making. But before we dive in, drop a comment with your prediction for the highest grossing movies of the year so you can come back to this video in December and laugh at just how wrong I was with this list. And consider subscribing and leaving a like. It helps out a lot.
This is a process. It's a process. It's a process.
First up, and we're going in release order, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. The 8th and maybe not final installment of the franchise. Famously, Dead Reckoning didn't do wonders at the box office. It lacked the near universal acclaim and event status of Tom Cruise's last summer blockbuster, but more importantly, it had the misfortune of releasing just 1 week before the biggest cinematic event of that year, Barbenheimer, which crushed any hopes of a big haul. On top of that, the film's budget was already ballooning due to numerous COVID delays, including this infamous soundbite.
I don't ever want to see it again!
And The Final Reckoning has thus been impacted by these very same delays, with a reported budget of $400 million, which would put it at 4th on the all-time most expensive movies list. And while I do think Final Reckoning will perform better than Dead Reckoning, it once again doesn't have the box office lane all to itself. It's going head-to-head with Lilo and Stitch, and you know the Disney moms will spawn in to push that to a near billion. Plus, June is stacked with competition, which isn't great for longevity. Realistically, I don't see this as a top contender for highest grossing movie of the year, but with my love for the franchise, I had to include it. The only way it pulls it off is if it's really good, like Maverick levels of good, and the finale aspect of it carries it to $1 billion plus, similar to what Furious 7 managed. We're about 3 months out, so let's see how big the marketing push is. Next up is F1. What a dumb title.
Stupid! It's stupid!
This is probably the least likely film in this video to become the #1 movie of the year, but 7 is a better looking number than 6, so let's break it down. Formula 1 has been one of the fastest growing sports in the world for a while now, thanks in part to Netflix's Drive to Survive and an all-time great 2021 season. This upcoming F1 season has a lot of potential, and the movie drops right in the middle of it, coinciding perfectly with the Austrian Grand Prix. A massive marketing push is surely coming, much to the behest of F1 Twitter. But niche fandoms don't make box office giants, so what could bring in the general audience? For one, big summer movie. We love big summer movie.
Yes, we do.
And maybe some leftover fumes from Top Gun Maverick will push this higher up the box office charts. If Joseph Kosinski can recapture that adrenaline-fueled action and put it on the track instead of the air, strong word of mouth could give F1 real momentum. If all else fails, Brad Pitt in a racing movie in June, that's gotta count for something. But there remains a significant obstacle, several actually, that being a stacked summer schedule. June is loaded. Ballerina, How to Train Your Dragon, Megan 2, 28 Years Later, and a couple of big July releases we'll get to in a bit. There are plenty of money-making factors in F1's favor, but not enough for me to call it a serious contender for the year's top spot. Not to mention that Apple movies are notorious for being financial failures. Next up on the calendar, Jurassic World Rebirth. I have to include the Jurassic movie on this list, because no matter how mediocre or misguided the last few entries were, they were still billion-dollar films. With that track record, any continuation of this franchise has to be in the conversation. That being said, Rebirth seems to be scaling back on the world part, something that I'm actually looking forward to. It's a return to basics: dinosaurs, island, exploration, maybe even some horror with the xenomorph and rancor-inspired mutant dinosaur. And while I'm excited, anyone with a massive childhood dinosaur phase probably will be, it's hard to gauge a universal sense of enthusiasm. The general audience seems more divided on this one than other films on the list, but not enough for it to flop. flop. Jurassic will always have its audience, but will it reach the heights of its predecessors? I'm skeptical. The last film left a sour taste, even if we can't say the same for the executives at Universal. People aren't as hyped for another Jurassic movie as they were a decade ago, so while I'd call it a stronger contender than some, I don't think it takes the crown. Unless it's astonishingly good, but that's asking for a lot. I love Gareth Edwards as a director, but I know the creator didn't work for everyone. Maybe dinosaurs are the key for a bigger hit. It also isn't the sole proprietor of July's hot zone for summer blockbusters, which could cut into its dominance. One of those July movies is Superman, DC's biggest bet ever. This one is kind of another hopium pick, but with reports of Warner Brothers launching a Barbie-sized marketing campaign, which landed them the highest grossing movie of that year, the sky's the absolute limit. I can't think of another movie in recent memory with this much pressure to succeed, financially, but even more so critically. Warner Brothers needs a flagship franchise, and on top of that, the entire DC brand is on the line. After a decade of playing catch up with the MCU, they're finally doing the sensible thing, hitting reset, handing the keys to James Gunn. If you're a comic book movie fan, you want this to succeed, unless you're part of the Snyder cult. Look, I was excited as anyone for the Snyder Cut, but those guys are on another level. That first teaser did exactly what it needed to: bring back hope. Hope that DC can finally be consistently great instead of hitting once for every 3 misses. And with Marvel struggling, we're practically begging for DC to swoop in and revitalize the comic book movie scene. And who better to do it than Superman? If there's one character that can capture the hearts of the general audience other than Batman, it's him. More importantly, James Gunn is directing this, and he's delivered time and time again. If this movie is as great as we hope it is, it could be a game changer for DC and comic book movies in general, not to mention Warner Brothers' financial needs. So I'm optimistic about this one. If past marketing campaigns are anything to go by, this could be huge. But can it compete with its biggest rival dropping just 2 weeks later? Because when we talk about the highest grossing movies of the year, we have to talk about the MCU. Between Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and Fantastic Four First Steps, the latter is primed to be the biggest and potentially best of the 3. That might not be the case looking at the history of this franchise, but here's the thing. As much as we love some of the Fox Marvel movies, we can't forget the bad. Now, Marvel's first family is finally back with Marvel. 5 years of development, multiple directors, even more writers, dozens of casting rumors, but finally, a concept that feels like a bona fide winner. And looking at the current state of the MCU, the Fantastic Four name is too big to fail, and it can't afford to, considering the role this movie is to play in the bigger Marvel picture. The trailer silenced any worries I might have had, making this a throwback retro piece is genius because the MCU has been desperate for something fresh, and this might be exactly what it needs. Free of the shackles of continuity, for now, there's plenty of room for creativity, and the cast is even better than we could have hoped for. Marvel has always nailed their casting, and getting Cousin as the Thing, I still can't believe they considered that. Okay. One major factor that sets this apart, Marvel themselves seem excited about it. The trailer launch, the IMAX countdown branded with Fantastic Four imagery, this isn't going to be another Marvel movie. It's kicking off Phase 6, a potential shift in the grander trajectory of the MCU, and people are already making an event out of this and Superman. Marvel and DC duking it out in theaters the way it's meant to be. And I think audiences will respond accordingly. July has become the de facto movie event month. My only worry, how much weight it has to carry up in setting up Avengers Doomsday. But financially, I have no doubts. With a pretty significant gap from July to November, Zootopia 2 has a pretty good chance of being the highest grossing movie this year, based purely on Disney and Pixar's sequel track record. And the fact that the first Zootopia already made $1 billion nearly a decade ago, and is one of the best Disney movies ever made. So unless it turns out to be horrifically bad, which it won't be, I would fully be expecting this to follow in the footsteps of sequels to Wreck-It Ralph, Frozen, Moana, The Incredibles, Inside Out, and financially surpass its predecessor. We're still a ways away, so there's no trailer yet and not much is known about the plot, but history tells us what to expect. It's merely a matter of how big that number can get. And finally, the 7th movie on this list, and in my opinion, the clear and already determined winner of the 2025 box office, Avatar: Fire and Ash. A few years ago, people doubted James Cameron. Avatar has no cultural impact. The first movie is overrated. CGI doesn't impress anymore. Well, we won't be making that mistake again. The Way of Water swam past $2.3 billion billion with ease, while the original Avatar is knocking on the door of $3 billion after multiple re-releases. People love going back to Pandora, even if the stories are simple and a little repetitive, and I do too. I still remember the environmental shockwave I felt stepping into the cold December air after 3 hours in one of the most breathtaking sci-fi worlds ever created, and I know I'm not the only one who craves that feeling. Story-wise, I don't expect Fire and Ash to wow me. In fact, Cameron's world-building strategy seems to be leaning even harder into more Last Airbender comparisons, and evil Fire Nation, air nomads, dressed like this? Come on, man! But regardless of what beloved animated Nickelodeon series this movie is ripping off, it's going to look spectacular. They're already hyping up the final battle as something that blows the way of water out of the water, and what reason would I have to doubt the climax of a James Cameron movie? Are these thematically rich movies with incredibly compelling characters? No, but when it comes to pure cinematic experience, nothing can compete. It's the pinnacle of blockbuster filmmaking, and that's why this will be the highest grossing movie of the year. The more interesting question becomes, can it outgross its predecessor? I'm going to say no, because the gap between 2 and 3 is way smaller than the gap between 1 and 2, but will it come close? Absolutely, and I'm more than ready to be proven wrong. So how do I see these movies playing out in an order based purely on guesswork? Obviously Avatar is number 1, then followed by Zootopia 2, then I'll say Superman's mega marketing campaign just about overcomes its summer competitor Fantastic Four, Paramount and Tom Cruise will the 8th Mission Impossible to 5th, followed by the inevitable Jurassic World Rebirth, with F1 coming in at 7th. And not to say that these are the only 7 movies that can challenge for a high spot on the list. Wicked 2, Thunderbolts, the numerous live-action remakes of beloved animated movies that no one asked for, and several others can all find themselves in the mix for those top spots. And I could be proven wrong immensely, but that's the burden we bear when putting opinions out on the internet. Most importantly, it's going to be a spectacular year for movies, and I hope to cover the best of it. So I'll ask again, what do you think? Will Lord Cameron reign supreme, or can someone knock the king off his box office throne? Let me know down below, and if you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like, hit subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.